We are Fandom Roulette.
Two nerds with a passion for
History,
video games,
tabletop games,
and, well, really any nerdy stuff that comes into our lives.
While we might not be able to name every ship classification in Star Wars,
Or every Pokemon.
or every spell in the player's handbook,
Well, one of us can.
we're still here to have a good time. Hey everyone, welcome to Fandom Roulette. This is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
Here on Fandom Roulette, we talk about a myriad of nerdy things, including history, video games, tabletop games, and whatever nerdy stuff we feel like talking about. So, Cody, what nerdy stuff have you been up to this week, my man?
Man, that was the most official intro I've ever heard in my life.
Oh, I know. It's almost as if we're getting good at this podcasting thing.
Oh no!
I know,
Nerdy
it's weird.
stuff.
Yeah.
I just ran a one-shot for the Rowdy Rough Boys, which is kind of like my one-shot scenario I run whenever my other D&D group is kind of split up and can't figure out what they want to do.
Sure.
I'm thinking about retiring that because I'm kind of growing tired of creating the super predictable one-shot in that setting, but
Sure.
that begs its own other can of worms that I got to open up. But beyond that, I will talk about it in the video game section.
What? Who could have foreseen this?
Only diviners of the highest caliber.
Yeah, man. No one plays divination wizards except for me that one time.
I would actually really love to play a divination wizard. But anyways, what
They're
nerdy
okay. They're pretty cool.
what nerdy stuff have you been up to?
So there's a couple of things, which is I'm working my way through Umbrella Academy, which has gotten really, really good.
Right? Doesn't it get better after that first episode?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm about halfway through the season right now, and it's pretty fantastic. I love all of the characters so much.
Yeah.
I want the actress who plays Allison /3 to become so incredibly famous. She's so talented and she's great. I mean, Ellen Page is already very famous. Tom Hooper's working his way up there. They're all great, but every time 3's on screen, I'm just captivated. I'm like, oh my god. And then what else? I played a super duper fun game over the weekend that I'm telling myself not to buy because it's probably too expensive to own it. But I played Lords of Waterdeep for the first time.
Hell yeah!
Yeah, that game was the fucking raddest.
Yeah, I am terrible at that game, but I really enjoy it. My wife is actually really good at it, and she crushes me, which is why I don't play it as much anymore.
Fair enough. Should we talk about it really briefly, or should we save it for a future episode?
No, we can go ahead and talk. Tell me about your experience. I'm curious to see how you feel about it.
So for those of you not in the know, Lords of Waterdeep is a resource management game that is created. It's set in the Forgotten Realms D&D campaign setting, and it is set in the city of Waterdeep, which apparently is ruled by I think 11 or 12 lords who hide out behind basically domino masks, so no one knows who the lords are at any given time, and they all have their own motivation. And then you play a series of factions who own taverns, and you get basically a secret task from a lord to do various things, which includes completing quests or building buildings or a number of other things. And so basically, to break it down real quick, you have a number of agents who can do things for you during your turn, which is to do something do political intrigue, which might help you or screw over another player. You can recruit basically D&D party members, and then you can collect quests and build buildings, and basically every quest has a collection of things, which means hey, in order to go and explore this cave, you're gonna need a fighter and 2 rogues and a wizard, and then and 4 gold, and then basically you get things you get glory based on how you complete these items, and then at the end that whole secret lord aspect of it comes out. So the first game I lost because I did not have enough gold. I did not, and then the second game I was ahead the entire time until the other player revealed that his Lord of Waterdeep was the lady who just wants you to build buildings. And he had built like, I think there are like 10 building spots, and he had built like basically 7 of 10 building spots.
Yikes.
Yeah, we realized it way too late to stop him.
Yeah.
We were like, oh no. Like, because we just assumed that all of the lords were just like rewarding you for going on different quests.
Nope.
And then I was like, oh, what if he has a lord that rewards you for just building buildings? And he had it, and I was like, oh, well, fuck me.
Classic. Yeah, that game's tough because like you can be ahead for the whole game or behind, but you get a lot of glory from completing like long-term quests, which like require a bunch of resources, and just the general notion of like there's always this secret objective, and even if you know all the objectives, it's like you never know which one any one person can have, because I believe one of them's like completing a certain type of quest.
Well, I mean, as I was looking at it, the nice thing I thought about it was that every lord had, it seemed like the lords had a fair number of like not contradictory goals, but enough overlap that like it was hard to tell, because it was like, this lord will reward you if you do piety and like warfare, and then another lord was like piety and commerce,
right?
And another one was like piety and skullduggery. So it was like, so you can't even necessarily like look at the kind of quests that the people are picking up, because it's like that could be one of like 3 lords.
Exactly.
You know?
Yep. And that's the thing about that game. It's a lot of it's a lot of trying to figure out what the other people's goals are while still trying to like, because one of the things about it being a resource management game is each turn only so many people can sit on a certain spot to gain resources.
Yeah.
And
like only one person can go and like collect rogues.
Right.
And if you need a lot of rogues for a quest, then you might have to go to a building and give another character like 2 victory points or something.
Exactly. So, and then one of the spots is just getting the right to go first on the next turn. So, you know, you always have to think about like, oh, what's that one person going to do to try to further their goal? And it becomes really challenging. I tend to go into tunnel vision and just try to finish my stuff without thinking about how to like put someone else down, which isn't usually my play style, but yeah, game's super fun. If you're into resource management games, like Settlers of Catan's another example of a resource management game. If you like that, but you also like D&D, Lords of Waterdeep is a really fun one. They also have a D&D skin for Betrayal on the House on the Hill, which I really want.
Betrayal at Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, and that seems really fun too. I want to play that.
Apparently there's also like 2 expansions for Lords of Waterdeep. There's one where you play where the Underdark is part of it. Okay. And then there's another one where it's like Skullport, where like your secret lord can be Xanathar.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, right. That's pretty great.
Super cool.
I'll say one last thing before, you know, like we dive into, you know, the sections. I think I kind of loved about the game was it gave me a wholly different perspective on D&D. Because like, you know, like when you're playing D&D, you are the party.
Right.
So you are like one of those little squares that like goes and hangs out at a tavern and is sent to go and like defeat the Xanathar. And then like, it kind of hilariously enough makes you feel like a very small piece in a very large world. Where it's like, oh man, I could have been one of like 16 missions that like, you know, to take a character from Cody's, you know, from the other campaign, like Guth, the bartender, sends people on different quests. And it's like, but for fate, like, could I have gone to the left instead of the right because Guth is like working for X faction or whatever.
Right. And that's a side tangent. That's a very delicate game to play Because on one hand, as a dungeon master for a D&D or for really any role-playing experience, you want the players to be the focus. But in the case of like Forgotten Realms and stuff like that, like you're not the only adventurer. You are just one of many. So it's kind of this weird, delicate balance of like reminding the players that, hey, you might not be the only people trying to save the world versus you are super important. It's a hard balance to maintain, especially if like your your setting and what you want to do conflict with each other sometimes.
Sure. I mean, I just thought it was kind of, it was a funny way to think about it. And then, like, as we were finishing up quests and we were like throwing the little cubes back on, someone was like, "So do you think that the implication is that these guys died, or that they're just kind of returning to like where they hang out in Waterdeep?" And we all kind of like hoped that it was the second one, but it could have been the first one.
True. I mean, at least in that game, I feel like it's implied that there's a reason that they needed to succeed. Like,
yeah.
Like, unless you're trying to blackmail those particular heroes, and then you're like, yeah, just go on this really dangerous quest for money and glory and then die. Like, I don't really think there's a reason for them to fail.
Yeah, it was just kind of funny.
But I enjoy the what ifs.
The one was like confront the Xanathar.
Oh.
And like, I want to imagine now that we have things like Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and you found out that like Xanathar is like technically the leader of like the basically like Waterdeep mafia, like that they like the party just showed up and like, "We're here to confront you, Xanathar." And Xanathar's like, "All right, what if I gave you like 10 gold and just like laid low for a little bit, and you guys could say that you took care of me, but like I'm still here?" And they're like, "All right, that works for us because you're very scary."
I could either disintegrate you or I can give you money.
Let's cut a deal.
Well, that's Waterdeep.
But anyways, yeah. Lords of Waterdeep. It's a lot of fun. And if you're trying to fill that D&D itch, but you don't necessarily want to sit down and play a 4-hour campaign or session, it's a lot of fun. And I will say it's not incredibly difficult to learn. As we were looking at the board, it was 3 of the 4 of us' first time playing. I was initially very overwhelmed, but like once you get rolling, like it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
All right, on to the history.
Yeah, what are we dumping on today?
Yeah, we're so this week we're talking. Oh no, you're gonna laugh because of the
we're talking no laughing about... zone. We're not allowed to laugh. Obligated.
No, it's the sack of Rome. Yes. So this is falling under my kind of broader umbrella of famous last stands.
Yeah.
Which is when a very small force is stands up to a very large force, which is something that is always kind of seen in films and in media as something that is very dramatic and cinematic and things like that. Now, the Second Rome takes place in May of 1527, which was a military event carried out in Rome, which at this point was part of the Papal States, which were basically like when the Roman Catholic Church had its own country. That's not a thing anymore, but it's and
I didn't quite catch that.
So the Vatican is still technically its own country, but it's like not a country that like has any real diplomatic power.
Okay.
Yeah, mainly it mainly remains its own state because like no one country can claim to have the Pope as like a citizen,
That is a weird concept considering the Pope feels like, at least from what vague understanding I know, is like some kind of superhero. Like he's got his own mobile.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. Well, hey, that's actually going to come up a little bit.
Yes. Pope mobile.
Not quite as much as you'd hope, but yeah, it's going to come up a little bit.
Nice.
Basically, so there was the Papal States, and then there was the Holy Roman Empire, which was like basically parts of Germany, parts of Austria, and other parts of Eastern Europe. I once had a history teacher who said this hilarious joke that the Holy Roman Empire was not holy, it was not Roman, and it was not quite an empire. Pretty good zing, whichever teacher said that in high school.
Yeah, thanks,
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, but it was basically between the Holy Roman Empire and an organization called the League of Cognac, which was an alliance of France, Milan, Venice, Florence, and the Papal States. So much like last week's episode, where we were talking a little bit about city-states and the weird thing that city-states kind of, like the weird role that kind of city-states filled, Italy was not a country until like the 19th century. So once again, it was examples of you had a number of large city-states that basically had their own forms of government, and sort of this loose alliance based on the fact that it's like, hey, we all kind of share a similar heritage, but also like the nation state of, the city state of Florence wasn't going to support like the city state of Milan, which wasn't going to support the city state of Venice, etc. If you've ever played Assassin's Creed 2, you kind of get that idea, right? Like a lot of these cities were like controlled by like one or two families, or like had a couple of families fighting over it.
Yeah.
And so basically, over time, the Holy Roman Empire, who at this point was led by Charles V, started to alarm Pope Clement the Seventh, who thought that Charles was attempting to basically take over the Catholic Church in Italy. So Clement VII formed an alliance with Charles V's archenemy, who is King Francis of France. Wow, surprise there. Which came to be known as the League of Cognac, probably because it was formed in Cognac, France, which is now purveyors of alcohol. It's like the whole champagne thing, but like with like brandy. And so basically the army of the Holy Roman Empire defeated the French army in Italy, and after a while, it was becoming harder and harder to keep this league together. Now, the 34,000 imperial troops mutinied and forced their commander, Charles III, who was the Duke of Bourbon and Constable of France, to start attacking Rome. And then basically they lead a march against Rome, and Pope Clement VII, who was actually a Medici member of the Medici family, they basically like the whole alliance was kind of falling apart in a major way. But anyway, in the year 1527, in imperial troops that consisted of 14,000 Germans, 6,000 Spanish, and an unspecified number of the Italian infantry started to attack Rome, which was being defended by 5,000 militiamen led by Renzo de Seri and 189 Papal Swiss Guard. And basically they were able to, because of a good artillery force, massive walls, and a couple other things, they were able to hold out for a while, but eventually, they were outnumbered pretty significantly. So, after, about, I think 2 or 3 days of fighting, we get to what we're talking about, which is the last stand of the Swiss Guard. So, I'm going to take a brief side tour.
We've never done that before.
So I'm going to talk real quick about the Pontifical Swiss Guard.
Yes.
The Swiss Guard is a pseudo-military organization that was founded about 20 years before the events we're talking about right now. It was formed in... let's see here. I had this number written down. It was 1506, something like that. Yeah, 1506 under Pope Julius II. It consists of members of the Swiss military, which no longer have a military. And basically, if you've ever been to the Vatican City, you'll recognize the Swiss Guard. They're the guys who wear the blue, yellow, and red uniform. We'll post a picture of it online, just so you guys can get a chance of seeing it.
Yeah, I would say it's like rad.
Yeah, I would say it's like akin to like the Beefeaters uniform in the UK. Like when you're standing outside of Buckingham Palace, where they're standing in their military red with their like gigantic, tall, fuzzy hats.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of that. Like because I'm looking at it right now, and I love the red feathered mohawk that they have.
Yeah, it's like that's like a traditional, I think, Spanish style helmet,
which I love.
Oh, I know, they're very cool looking, and the thing is, like when you're looking at those guys, like that's basically designed for tourism. But if you are a member of the Swiss Guard, you're like actually part of one of the most basically elite military forces in the world.
Say what?
Yeah, like basically, you know, if you go behind the scenes, like they are the Vatican's like police force and guarding force. They're incredibly highly trained. They have a very advanced like technology, like technological like support units and things like that.
Are they masters of MMA?
Probably some variety of hand-to-hand combat.
Yes.
Maybe not. Yeah.
I was kidding about MMA, but I wanted to know.
Yeah, I understand. And so you have to be an unmarried Swiss Catholic male between 19 and 30 to join. And while when I said that the Popemobile does come into it, so they were on hand during the assassination attempt of Pope John Paul II in 1981. Which is why the Pope now rides around in the Popemobile basically to keep them safe. But the like 6 or 7 people that run beside the Popemobile are Swiss Guard who are not uniformed because it's not going to be easy to run around those uniforms. But anyway, back to The Last Stand. In the event known as The Last Stand of the Swiss Guard, the Swiss, along with the garrison's remnant, made their last stand in the Teutonic Cemetery within the Vatican. Their captain, a man named Caspar Royst, was wounded and later sought refuge in his house, where he was killed by Spanish soldiers in front of his wife. The Swiss fought bitterly, and they were immensely outnumbered and almost annihilated, but there were 42 who survived this attack out of the original 189. Now, the reason that this is important is because one of the main things that these troops were trying to do was basically capture the Pope. So, you know, once again, you know, capturing the Pope was an important, you know, political figure at this time. But because of the delays made by the Swiss Guard, the Pope was able to make it through the Passetto di Borgo, which was a secret corridor that still connects the Vatican City to Castel Sant'Angelo, which is a very large fortified castle. Now, over the time, basically after this happened, they were able to, they were basically starting to ravage the city. Thankfully, the Vatican Library was saved because a gentleman named Philibert had sent up his headquarters there. And then after 3 days of ravages, Philibert ordered the sack to cease. However, few obeyed this. Clement remained a pseudo-prisoner, but he was eventually saved with other... basically, this ends bad. So Clement VII did surrender and paid a ransom of 400,000 ducati in exchange for his life, and basically gave up a bunch of land to the Holy Roman Empire. So, you know, it's not it's not great. This is often cited as the end of the Italian Renaissance, mainly because Rome was once again a seat of power of art and this. It also demonstrates a power shift away from the Pope and towards the Empire. Basically, people argue that this was the last potential for having a unified Italy until it was unified in the 19th century. This also kind of kickstarts some other stuff. The emperor was embarrassed that his troops had imprisoned the Pope. But he had also sent them to imprison the Pope. So shrug emoji. And this also kind of kickstarted what eventually led to the English Reformation, because he basically on the wishes of Charles V, the Emperor of the Holy Roman Empire, refused to give King Henry VIII permission to divorce his wife Catherine of Aragon, which kickstarted the English Reformation. So this was kind of a big deal in kind of the shift of how religious powers work. This is always a really interesting period to look at, because there's some people out there who still think that the Pope and the Vatican still have the power that they once had, but like this is basically the end of that for pretty much ever. But do you have any questions about this? So I guess the thing is, we have here 189 soldiers who are able to, for quite a long time, valiantly hold off something like 20,000 troops or something like that, which is impressive. And today they're still honored. Those Swiss Guard are still considered some of the most elite that have ever stood in these amazing Renaissance era uniforms. So
damn.
There you go.
What a last stand.
Yeah, right. So this one, also the fact that it ended up them standing within a Teutonic cemetery just sounds really cool.
That does sound like a rad fight to have in an RPG, like a big old battle in a cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Yes.
Go for it.
Swiss Guard? Is that
yes.
their
Yep.
So like I'm looking at their tradition. I assume those are traditional uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
Are they they're like modern day badasses too, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like that's just garbed for the sake of having a royal garb.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of to match like the decor of the Vatican City. But like I said, like if you were ever to go to Westminster, or if you were ever to walk down, walk past military installments in like London, there is like a place where the cavalry was historically situated, where you still have soldiers sitting on horses, things like that.
Gotcha.
But like, they don't wear those big, fuzzy hats anymore, nor do they wear those red coats. If you're in active military service, you're wearing camo or things like that.
You mean the ostentatious, big red mohawks don't help you in combat?
Not anymore, sadly.
Fuck. This reminds me of was it the French who had the multicolored uniform for a hot minute, and that didn't work out real well? Was that who I'm thinking of?
Yeah, the French had a multicolored uniform for a hot minute.
And it was really bright and ridiculous.
I have heard rumors that, this could just be a joke, but I've heard rumors that one of the reasons that the British favored a red uniform was to hide the fact that if you got shot. Yeah, that could be wrong, but I've heard that it was that might have been.
That would be really funny.
So one last really quick thing, there is a great comic series called Archibald and Archer, which, to give you just like the quickest premise overview, Archer is an assassin who was raised at a creationist museum in like southern Ohio / northern Kentucky, and Archibald is an ageless emperor from Mesopotamia who has become a huge drunk. And together they're fighting an international conspiracy. And in like issue 2 or 3, they're driving through the Vatican, and Archer's like, "Why do the Swiss Guard wear such crazy uniforms?" And Archer goes, "Why do the Swiss Guards wear such crazy uniforms?" And Archibald goes, "Oh, that's crazy. You know, one time I got really drunk with Michelangelo, and I told him that it would never that uniform would never be accepted, and then he won, so I owed him a drink." And I was like, "That's a pretty funny joke." So
that's good.
All right, but yeah, so that is the last stand of the Pontifical Swiss Guard, one of the famous last stands in history. So there you go. And of course, now that history is done, it means it's time for some
middle section.
Hey guys, welcome to the middle section.
Welcome.
If you want to join in on this here conversation, or let us know about some of your favorite last stands, and or if you played Lords of Waterdeep and you were the person who had to build the houses and then you won at the 11th hour, or anything else we've been talking about in this episode, please feel free to join in on the conversation. There are lots of ways to get in touch with us. In fact, one of the easiest ways to get in touch with us is by going to our Twitter, which is
FandomR_podcast.
Very good. That's our Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you want to write a lengthier email where you like give us suggestions about things we can do in the future, or write some fanfic about our garbage kids, so for us to read them online, or tell us that our opinions of things are don't quite line up with your opinions of the things, and you don't want to do it in like 240 characters because that's not a lot of characters. Especially if you want to hashtag something, why don't you send us an email at
fanroulettepodcast@gmail.com.
But Joe and Cody, you're saying to yourself right now,
yes,
if you're listening to the podcast, I don't want to share my email with you.
Right.
That's weird.
Yeah, what if they sell it to the
us.
Russians?
Yeah, we're not going to do that, though.
Well, that's what you say.
I know.
I'm a turncoat now. I know last episode I was like, I wouldn't do it, but now I'm gonna.
Man, is it just going to be like the two of us turncoating on each other for like the rest of the time?
Yes.
Well, but you can go to our website. Duh.
www.fandomroulette.com.
Well, and then you're like learning about like the host, and you're like, whoa, this sounds like two guys that I would hang out with and be friends with in the real world. And you're like, cool. And then as you continue to scroll down, you're like, whoa, look at all these episodes that I can listen to right now. Whoa,
lots
that's great.
of episodes.
But what's that at the bottom?
Well, social links for all of our social medias, but it also has a little area where you can ask us questions, and it sends it from the website, so you don't have to give us your email.
Well, that sounds crazy.
It's just crazy enough to work.
But Cody, if I go to the website, but if I don't want to go to the website, are there other places where I can find the podcast to listen to?
That's a very good question. We're on SoundCloud. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Play. We're also on Spotify.
Wow, that's a lot of places.
Yeah, if you search Fandom Roulette, you'll find our logo with the glasses and all the nerdy things.
And all those nerdy things you love. Also, if you do go to iTunes, I don't know how these work on other platforms because I listen to all my podcasts through iTunes.
Fair enough.
Please do rate, review, and subscribe. Please give us a 5-star rating, and write a little something about it. Write why you like it. I know that in Apple terms, there's like an algorithm that's based on positive reviews and positive star rankings that moves us up, so that people who are like maybe just looking for a new podcast might be able to find us independently of being your friend or whatever.
Yeah,
and we would really appreciate that. So,
but you should also share us with your friends. If you got nerdy friends, you should totally share us, because I'm sure we're gonna hit something that they'll like.
100%. Like, yeah. Please feel free to share us with our friends. But let rando people in on the fun as well.
Yeah, so. You can also do the normal social media stuff with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, all Fandom Roulette except for the
Grindr.
Twitter one. We're on.
MySpace,
Ooh,
Friendster.
MySpace. We got a GeoCities account.
We got an Angel Fire with like 30 rotating GIFs at the top of the page.
Yeah.
What else? What are some other obscure? We got a live journal. I think you might have already made that joke.
We live journal. We're on TikTok.
Check out our Goodreads account. Hit us up on the movie one that I'm blanking on right now. Just kidding. We don't actually have any of those. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and back to the fun.
Hello?
Hi. How are you?
I'm all right. I seem to have gotten lost.
Well, let me help you. What are you looking for?
Well, here's the thing. I don't usually speak. I'm usually like a flat line that like rings a bell, and or hits you with a hammer, and or flips bacon at your face.
The fuck?
I'm Mr. Game & Watch.
Oh, I understand now.
Speak.
It's weird to actually hear your voice. I guess I was just thrown off that you weren't just like beeping at me.
Well, here's the thing, sir. In my original iteration, all I could do is beep because of the limited space of information on video game cartridges. But now in this new age of technology, I'm still a flat line, but I have a very nice lower, upper baritone to lower tenor voice, depending on how you qualify voice ranges.
Okay, cool.
I heard that you enjoy your video games, Mr.
So, on that note, today I'm talking about another indie game. This one's an actual indie game, I promise.
Oh, cool! Yeah,
from the developer of
I'm back now.
Yes. From the developer of Matt Makes Games comes Celeste. I think that's how you say it.
Yeah,
I've been worried about
this game.
Well, it released last year, January 25th, like right when like a bunch of really good games came out. So this one kind of fell under my radar. Okay. I picked it up later. And that's
the beauty of the season system.
Right? It is a platformer similar to those of like Mario, Mega Man, or at least the platforming elements of it. You can think of all the old retro platformers, and this is like that but polished up. It looks nice in its kind of 16-bit like future retro style. It's the story of a girl named Madeline who goes to conquer Mount Celeste and reach its summit, and along the way she meets some silly people like a crazy old lady who I'm not sure if she's actually alive or not, but she's wacky and crazy. And there's a silly Instagram photographer from Seattle who you see every now and then. It is a hard platformer disguised as this really cute like 16-bit adventure where the main character is a girl conquering her fears.
I can get down to that.
Yeah. The platforming's super tight and really nice. It's got a midair dash mechanic where you basically get a double jump or like a speed boost, and you can climb on walls and stuff. It's fairly, I don't want to say fairly limited in that aspect. I think what they do with the game, and the game does a really good job of like explaining how all this works, is like you have the jump, and then they teach you how to do the dash. And then they teach you how to, like, grab onto things. And then the game, like, throws new mechanics, like certain little areas where, like, if you dash through them, you go super fast. Or platforms that you can kind of move by hitting the directional pads depending on where you are on it. I think this game is super fun. It's definitely harder. So if you're looking for an easy go at it, you might want to change your tune on this game. But and my one, like, basically this game besides this last point that I'm going to bring up, is a 10 out of 10.
Okay.
But for the first 2 hours of the game, I decided to try to play this with a keyboard, because naturally, when I play computer games, I don't necessarily immediately go to my controller. Seems kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this. This game is absolute garbage to control with a keyboard and mouse. You don't even use the mouse. It's just a keyboard. And it's awful. It's Z, X, and C are the default like things they teach you. So look at your keyboard for a second.
Okay.
Find the C key.
Found it.
Find the X key.
It's right next door.
Find the Z key.
Oh my gosh.
It's all right there. Those are all the buttons you need. But guess what?
What?
I need you to press all three of those in very tight puzzles, some of them being timed, in various fashions.
Oh, see.
Do you see where the problem is?
I do see, and I would do it, except that I don't want to make it to sound bad. So.
Just like... This game, I would argue, I'm on the side that this is one you need to play with a controller. Just the way the game plays, it's better to, like, I don't know what it is about, like, vertical tapping, like, with, like, the WASD, like, with those fingers, but for some reason, the idea of smashing C a lot with my pointer finger, having to smash the X key pretty frequently, and the Z key, but all in very differing variations, is so wild to me. Like, I couldn't get it. Like, I died on the first and second level, like, easily 30 or 40 times throughout the whole thing. Like, it's one of those games where, like, you're supposed to die a lot. Like, it keeps score of how many times you die. But the thing was, it's like kind of like a puzzle game in that way, where you're really just learning how to navigate the environment. Like, you get, certain springboards or different mechanics that'll help you get through the game.
Okay.
And it wasn't the fact that I was dying so often because I didn't understand what I needed to do. I knew exactly what I needed to do, and it usually only took me 1 or 2 tries. The problem was, I could never get my fingers to do exactly what I wanted when it's like, okay, I need to jump here, and then hold up, then dash, then hold on to this thing for a second, then let go of the dash, or let go of the hold, and then jump again. Like, it's so weird, and I almost gave up on this game. Like, I was just going to be like, this, I'm going to play a different game. I'm not going to review this one.
Sure.
But then, while I was looking through the controls, thinking, well, you know what, maybe I should just change my key bindings. That's when I saw that, like, oh, there's controller settings. Maybe the controller just plays better. And I switched to controller, and immediately my experience, like, I died 50% less just from that switch alone.
Interesting.
So, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah, sure.
Should games warn you if certain peripherals are going to be a better experience than others?
So I would say that, yeah, I would say that they might make a recommendation, just because that sounds like it would be kind of frustrating, and if I had known that before, because I don't have any, like, USB controllers or anything like that, like, maybe I would give it a pass. So
exactly. And then I was looking at the game because, like, I was perplexed. I was looking online and everyone's like 10 out of 10, greatest game. It's just so good. And don't get me wrong, the atmosphere is amazing. I love the arts. Like, this is pixel art done right. The music is fucking lit. It's like one of the few soundtracks where, like, they really hit all the good beats. Like, they have really good slow music for when you're just kind of learning the environment. But then they got that really, like, fast-paced, like, crazy music for when, like, shit gets real. Because usually the end of every level has some kind of version of a boss battle. So, that being said, and that question I offer you a second question.
Yeah.
Does a game's quality or the quote-unquote rating of a game be affected by this potential not knowing what peripheral to play with?
It's complicated, right?
Right. I'll tell you what my thought is on it.
Yeah.
And let me know if you agree. To answer the first question, I think a game should let you know in-game what is the better peripheral. Like if it's mouse and keyboard or if it's controller. Like for instance, Super Meat Boy does this. Basically, before the game even starts with Super Meat Boy, the game tells you, play with a controller. It's going to be a better experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just think that's like I know it's only like a quality of life thing, because really all it is making sure that right after either after the title or after your, oh, it was produced with this and developed by this, like, just letting people know, like, hey, this is probably going to be a good experience with like a keyboard and a mouse or a controller, because I almost just shrugged this game off and went, well, that's X amount of money that I'm just not going to see. Like, I did not enjoy this game. It was not fun.
Yeah, for sure.
But after switching, it totally changes my tune. I think the game is super playable. Do I think it affects the rating so much or like the acclaim that it got? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say in a very dramatic way.
Yeah.
But I do feel like at some point, developers should, especially in this day of, March of 2019, or even a year back when this came out in 2018, there should be like these quality of life things embedded in the game. Like, I shouldn't have to discover later that the way I was playing was basically for silly heads who don't know to just pull out the controller. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, personally, I love Celeste. I'm still playing through it. I've just completed like the second like full complete level, and I'm like halfway through the third one. It's super rad. I love the platforming now that it feels good to play.
Yeah.
But holy shit, was I pissed off when I was just like trying to get through level 1 and I couldn't even like do like complex things like jump from one platform to the other while going under it and then dashing above it and grabbing onto a ledge. It's like it was super frustrating.
Yeah, I could see that being really frustrating.
So, good game, but definitely get a controller for sure.
Yeah, I guess I think what it boils down to is obviously gameplay is probably the first and foremost, but like, if you're enjoying your, but yeah, if you can't enjoy yourself without a periphery, then yeah, maybe that should impact your rating just a little bit. So,
yeah. Enough about video games.
What?
Do you smell it?
Oh gosh. It smells bad. It smells.
Ooh.
Oh gosh, what's a good bad smelling thing?
It smells
what's a good
like
bad smelling thing?
A good bad smell?
Show.
Nothing. I don't think there's a good bad smell. You know what it smells like though?
What?
It smells like something covered in BO.
Oh god, gross. I hate BO so much.
Ugh, god, it gives me anxiety if I even like can smell it in the air. I'm like, is that me? What? No, more deodorant, and just like cover myself in deodorant.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Woof.
What is it though, Cody?
It's actually the Garbage Kid.
Oh no!
Yeah.
What is Garbage Kid?
Well, you know what? I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad I asked too.
So here on Phantom Roulette, Joe and I, we go through and we build custom tabletop characters for your games, for your stories, whatever you want to use these characters for. These we build with our love, smells, and science for you, the audience.
Love smells.
Love smells and science.
Okay.
And we build these characters using a lovely D&D 5th edition supplement known as Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Everything?
Almost.
Okay.
So, we use our top-rated scientists, writers, authors, and artists.
We got them all here.
We got them all here. And today, drum roll please, we have Ice Lion Mourner.
Oh my god, yeah!
They are a
love
human bard.
Okay.
So, Ice knew who their parents were and was born at home.
Nice.
Ice is the youngest of 4 siblings.
Okay.
They grew up with their mother and father
Yay!
and lived a poor lifestyle, having no permanent residence.
Not so yay.
Ice had a few close friends and lived an ordinary childhood.
Very nice. Good job, Ice.
Ice has a mithril horn made by elves.
Ooh.
Their most embarrassing moment was when an owlbear was set loose during one of their performances. It was pretty embarrassing.
They'll do it.
Ice is 22 years old and has had 3 life events leading up to this very moment.
Very nice. What are the life events?
First, they fought in a battle and escaped unscathed while their friends were injured or lost.
Oh, snap.
Yep. Next, they fell in love.
Aw.
And then finally, Ice spent time working as a bard to make some extra money.
Boo.
So,
I always hate rolling that one. I'm like, no.
it's not the most ideal. But after we talk about the garbage kid, which you can tweak and make your own, we like to put them through the test, you know.
Yeah.
We put them through our live TV show, and then we give you the results. So the question I have to ask you is, would Ice Lion Mourner go into Hot Topic, and would they buy something?
So it's an interesting one, Cody.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to say no, and this guy is more of a box lunch kid.
Oh, box lunch kid, huh?
Yeah, do you know what box lunch is?
Nope.
Box lunch is a similar store that is owned by the same company that owns Hot Topic, but it's a little bit brighter lit, and it's more like Disney and Harry Potter stuff and some anime stuff as well.
Wow, they
As
really
opposed
went
to,
full
like,
circle, huh? They were like, well, we got all the emo goth kids. Now we need to get everybody else.
Yeah, it's like they were like listening to like the Gilligan's Island theme song. They're like the goth kids, the emo kids, and the rest. And they're like, oh, we don't got the rest, do we?
Damn it.
Oh, snap.
I don't remember that part of Gilligan's Island, but
Yeah,
is it
was like,
weird that some people might not know what Gilligan's Island is?
that is weird. I mean, there was like a millennial reboot in the 2000s called Lost.
Boo.
You know what?
That was a bad joke.
That was absolutely terrible, and I'm keeping
Cut
it
it.
in. No.
Nope, cut it,
No.
cut it, 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 cut it.
Anyways,
So anyways,
I
so-
agree. I think if Ice went in at all, it was just like a phase. Like maybe right
Yeah.
after they fought in that battle, but they didn't buy anything. They were just browsing, trying to explore what it would be like to constantly listen to My Chemro every day and wear eyeliner and all that.
Yeah, we were all teens once, huh?
Yeah, we were all there. So anyways.
So anyway,
That is our garbage kid. Let me and toss him in the garbage. I did so.
Swish,
Swish, boom.
swish.
And that's how I beat Shaq.
Oh no! Oh, Shaq.
Guess what? You didn't think it was going to happen, but I was going to beat Shaq live on the podcast.
Shaq has got to stop losing to people who were kids in the 90s.
It's true.
Is it like, was that like his secret, like, was that his like secret kryptonite? Was like children born in the 90s? Where he was like, I just can't beat them.
I think it, yeah, I think it was It was him like trying to get that out because he can't tell people that. The NBA wouldn't allow that. Like they are a tight-knit, closed, like Illuminati group. So like they would never reveal Shaq's secret. But no one was going to believe that Aaron Carter actually defeated Shaq in a one-on-one ball game. Except his weakness is playing against 90s kids.
Well, here's a secondary theory.
Okay,
Perhaps
hit me up.
The Monstars stole only Shaq's abilities, specifically only when he was playing with 90s kids.
Oh, damn it. And then that's when... Oh my god, and when they won and they gave all the power back, it was after that battle, and he's like, I don't know why I lost to that kid. And now he's like tormented forever that Sir Carter defeated him in combat.
Lord Reginald Carter. I mean, it's not actually his name, but I don't care. So anyways, hey, what are we talking about this season when it comes to the role-playing games?
Yeah, so we're coming back to role-playing games. We're coming back to a comfort zone of some good old-fashioned comfort food, and we're going to talk about monsters.
Well, I'm scared, Cody.
No. Don't be scared. No.
No. Scared.
No. Shh. Because I'm going to tell you how to play them.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah, you know. I mean, I was going to drag that out, see how long you could pretend to be scared, but it scared me so much that I wanted to reveal that there was a way out for you.
That was very kind of you.
So, we're going to talk about all different kinds of monsters and stuff like that, but I think we initially decided that we should probably talk about how to play these creatures, these monsters, because that's going to be super important later about, thinking about these things, because if you don't, and this is going to sound silly, and I promise this isn't like a jab at people who are like, taking this in and being like, oh yeah, but like when you're creating monsters in any kind of role-playing game or any kind of like opposition that is monstrous in nature, you have to think about a couple of things to make them not feel so much like just a big old bag of hit points that like the barbarian can cleave into.
Sure.
Like, I think for me, I always loved, the idea of storytelling and the way that shows and movies make, even in that moment, even if it's totally not real, but like what's that wolf gonna do to the main character? And part of that as a DM is knowing how to play monsters of any and all kinds. So really what I'm saying is, how do you play one of these creatures?
Yeah.
And base monsters, like let's for instance, let's go back to the wolf, right? You don't want it to just be a bag of hit points, right?
Mm-hmm.
You want that to feel like a plausible encounter. Well, guess what? Even if it's a wolf, they have basic survival instincts. They want to live. They need to feed. They have a home they want to protect. They potentially have kids, or spawn of their own, like
Cubs.
And so thinking about like those basic survival instincts when you're playing those creatures really goes a long way, because not all creatures are just going to barrel through the forest and just charge your party.
Sure, 100%.
Some of them are going to be predators. Some of them are going to stalk and watch their prey as they slink through the forest and wait for the moment where they set up camp and only one of them's awake. And that's when they strike. Or, some animals are going to be potentially docile. They're going to run away from you as soon as you walk up. But if you walk into their nest, like if it's an owlbear, and you walk into an owlbear's nest, it's gonna be fucking pissed and try to attack you.
Yeah, you're in their home right now.
Exactly. So thinking about these things and describing that, because that's one of the big things as a DM describing why things are happening the way they are. As long as it's about things that are not player specific. Like, don't describe the players doing the things unless they want that. Talk about what the enemy is doing, what these wolves are doing. You know, why are they attacking the party? Are they hungry? Are they starving? Like, are you the first food they've seen in weeks? Like, those are the kinds of questions you want to ask yourself. And something that I picked up a lot, like, pretty early on in my time playing, is I like to use wisdom saves a lot for monsters to figure out, like, how they would react in a situation where, like, you know, for instance, if the wolf, or if a pack of wolves attacks a party, what happens when the wolf takes a huge hit and almost dies from the one attack from the barbarian who almost cleaves it in half?
Yeah.
Or what if the pack of wolves see almost immediately one of their brethren fall in combat? So I often make creatures, or even people in general, just villains in general, make wisdom saves on things that the party does that the enemy is not aware that's going to happen. Usually it's a DC 10 or 12. That's pretty standard, because I know low-level monsters have a pretty low wisdom score. It's just the nature of the game. But you can make that DC higher and or lower depending on what you feel is necessary. So, like, for instance, say the pack of wolves. We'll go back to the wolves again. They attack the party. The party's, the party hasn't been doing a lot of damage. The wolves kind of, and then their first brethren falls. And the wolves look and they see that all of them are covered in wounds. They might not leave because they think they have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's not a time to do a wisdom save. But if the battle starts and the wizard conjures a fireball and blows up two of the wolves, it's like, all right, maybe you got to save. Because, like, if that were me at my most primal, I'd be getting the fuck out of there. Just saying.
Yeah, I agree.
Then, and my favorite part, what happens if you're playing with sapient monsters or monsters that are intelligent and wise? This gets interesting because, and we may have talked briefly about this before, first, they have motivations. Like, it's not just those primal, like, and it might be a primal thing. It might be survival or things like that, but they can get so much more complicated.
Yeah.
Sapient monsters could, maybe one of your party members killed its friend or its lover.
Yep. And
now it's out for blood. Or maybe in this society, this sapient monster, like, wherever it lives, it needs to be accepted, and the only way to do that is to defeat the party.
Kind of rude to send one guy against a party, but you're right.
Right. Or maybe it's a power grab. Maybe the group is holding on to a magical item that they need. Or maybe they're holding on to money and it's just greed.
Yeah. No,
all of these things are interesting ways to basically explain why sapient monsters would attack the party. They also play to their strengths. If they're smart, like, a vampire isn't going to go out in the middle of the day and just be like, let's do this, and just melt. Like, that's not what they're going to do. And, like, a changeling, someone who's a master of changing their appearance at any given moment, isn't going to show their true form unless they're taken off guard.
Yeah, they're going to probably try to avoid combat as much as possible.
Yeah, and they're probably going to try to trick the party into letting them go.
Mm-hmm.
And, they almost succeed until their meddling dog came in and discovered their true plot.
Yeah.
So the question is, with all that being said, how do you play that? And I think part of it is why that creature is attacking you in the first place. But I think what the players are going to see and what's going to make them feel more real, and not just like, blah, I'm Dracula #1, blah, and just get blasted, is how you play that creature.
Yeah.
And that goes down to characteristics of that creature. Because now that they're smarter, they probably have characteristics. Are they aggressive? Are they thinkers and tactical? Do they get emotional over certain situations? Like what happens to the vampire when you slight his family with verbal abuse? You know, does he like hone in on that target? Is he pissed that you would even dare to insult the family of that vampire? Making them real people with their own flaws and things like that. When we built NPCs in the past, you know, having quirks or having flaws about them, like maybe they're overly arrogant, so they have this grand like entry and they monologue, which gives the party enough time to like get into position, and or maybe they're super smart, but they're also like fucking weird, you know, like give them some weird tricks. I love giving sapient enemies, adversaries, like a weird quirk or an interesting quirk.
Yeah. I have noticed that, for the record.
And then another thing to think about, and I think this one doesn't necessarily always come into play when your party is fighting them, but like how do they take on the party? You know, like a changeling isn't gonna try to do, you know, a fisticuffs match with your fighter. They're gonna try to goad them into fights with other people or creatures, or even just lure them into bad traps. You know?
Yes.
Some creatures might. Some might, like, you know, for instance, the arrogant vampire might be goaded into doing one-on-one combat with the party member who has the sword of sunlight on them, you know? Like, you don't know. But those are things to think about when you're creating monsters with intelligence. Like, they're going to have characteristics, they're going to have quirks, they're going to have flaws. And basically, there's a spot in the DMG, there's tons of places to find, like, online for motivations behind, like, villains and all that good stuff. Like, a lot of it is, it's like that, what's my motivation? I don't know it. Like, a lot of that, if you have that in your toolkit, sometimes it doesn't even matter what the enemy does. Like, even if they're just like a brawler, if they're an interesting brawler and do things like kick sand in their eyes because they don't play by the rules, or maybe they play too closely to the rules and that gives you certain advantages. You know, like, these are things to think about when playing monsters for your party, because that makes them feel more real. That makes that, you know, that immerses you, so to speak, which is basically what you're trying to do as a DM.
Yeah, exactly.
Or at least part of it. I shouldn't say it's the only thing, because that feels weird, but definitely something to consider when creating these monsters, to make them not feel like bags of hit points. Describe what they're doing. Describe, like, the intricacies of why the wolf, like, you know, oh, you look at these pack of wolves and all of them, like, you can see their ribs because they're so hungry and they're drooling and slobbering and they look crazy. Like, that immediately changes the combat from wolves attack to, oh, now I kind of feel bad because they're just really hungry.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, maybe you could convince the party to try smarter techniques.
Exactly. Like, if you give an obvious weakness or a weakness they can learn up front, they can start planning to take on encounters the way most DMs want them to, which is with, like, some foresight, you know? Like, oh, if I know that the vampire who's an arrogant asshole is gonna, like, fight me at high noon tomorrow in his crypt, like, I can do some research. I can figure out the best way to do this.
Yeah. High noon midnight.
High noon midnight. Well, I said high noon in a crypt. It's different.
That's fair.
It's high midnight.
It's high noon midnight. Well,
Yes.
That's going to be the name of my vampire western.
Hell yeah, it's high noon midnight.
High noon midnight.
Is it the vampire story about a young fledgling vampire who falls in love with a human and then he sparkles when he gets turned into vapor from the sun?
Sure.
Cool.
Is that the note to wrap her up on?
Do we really want to wrap up on a Twilight joke?
I don't know. Do we? I will say this as a person who has gone through encounters. One of the reasons I kind of wanted to do this topic was the fact that having characters with or having monsters with like motivations or clear motive has made for some pretty interesting combat encounters and non-bat encounters in a way as well.
Yeah. I mean, shit. If you guys hadn't stopped to talk to the main bad guy of your last campaign, you wouldn't have realized that I was pulling one over on you and that you were killing a good guy.
Yeah, killing a medium guy. Let's go with that.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
He was kind of sketchy towards us. Yeah, and I think it's just important that, you know, like you said, when they feel real, it creates a more interesting thing for a more interesting dynamic for the party in general. Which at the end of the day, I think the more interested the party is, the more likely you're going to have a long-term campaign that continues, instead of one that maybe fizzles out a little bit earlier. So
true that.
Yeah, and I think that's a wonderful place to end.
You bet.
Thank you guys so much for listening to an episode of this, yet another episode of Phantom Roulette.
Yeah.
As always, this was a pleasure to record for you guys. Please go back and consult the middle section if you want to find out about any of our social media things. And please go and rate, review, subscribe, all that wonderful stuff. We appreciate it. We appreciate your support. Let's see. This week, tweet at us about what color scheme your Renaissance era armor would have.
Ooh.
And yeah, signing off for Fan Roulette, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.